Hello, hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to another live discussion about the power of psychedelics for healing and for conscious evolution. I am your host today, Dr. 1Dreah Pennington, and I'm coming to you from the not so sunny south of France. And I'm looking forward to having this discussion with my retreat co-host, Jessika Lagarde. She is the co-founder of Women on Psychedelics, and she is my co-facilitation lead for two psilocybin truffle retreats that are happening in the Netherlands this fall. The first one is for women, or femmes only, and that is called Sacred Feminine. We will be diving into the world of body positivity and self-love with our 5-day psilocybin truffle retreat, which includes 2 ceremonies, breathwork and yoga. All of the food and activities are included. And then we return to the Netherlands in October for the Visionary Leadership Truffle Retreat, which is all about unleashing your creativity, removing any blocks or limits that might be holding you back from thriving in business. So for entrepreneurs and business leaders, that is the Visionary Leadership Retreat with psilocybin truffles. So I thought we could kick this off. Some of you have been following me for a while, so you've gotten my emails. I've actually gotten some questions from folks that already know they want to ask about psilocybin. Is it safe? Why using it for only women? Like, what's the deal with all of that? So I'm looking forward to having Jessika join this conversation, and we will dive into these topics. If you would like to ask a question, you can just type into the chat and it'll pop up here, and I can answer your questions. So I'm curious, go ahead and type into the chat now. What's your experience with these sacred medicines? Have you tried them? Are you scared of them? Are there things about sacred medicines that you're curious about? I would love, love, love to hear from you. So just type into the chat, and yeah, would love to see what's coming up for you. And if you want to talk about where you're tuning in from, that's always fun for me as well, because we have people from all over the world. And I love that about my community. So very good to see you, Sandra D. in the United States. Very good to have you here with us today, and looking forward to coming to America to see you soon. Yeah, as a married woman, right? All right, so what are your questions? Go ahead and type them into the chat. And as we are getting things started, Jessika will join us shortly. One of the most important things I think people need to understand is that for those of us that grew up around the 70s or 80s, there was a lot of talk on TV. You know, anyone post Nixon, so the 60s to 70s and 80s, television, at least in America, was all about your brain would be fried if you took drugs. And that is true for some street drugs. But the reality is psychedelics, and I'm lumping into psychedelics things like LSD, mescaline, MDMA, psilocybin. We're now even seeing with ayahuasca, and yes, even the synthetics like ketamine and LSD. So when we're thinking about what the past taught us, we were basically force-fed propaganda that said that it's going to fry your brain. I remember hearing in school, in middle school and high school, that if you took acid, it's going to stay in your brainstem and it could come back in flashbacks. We heard that people would just go completely crazy. And the reality is, this was a big propaganda attack to keep these sacred medicines from the general public. They didn't want too many people to be waking up to the realities of what capitalist, war-promoting, patriarchal systems had to offer. People who were waking up to that were indeed tuning in and dropping out of school or dropping out of the draft, and that was certainly very dangerous. So hearing the Reagan administration talk about just say no. For most of us, that was pretty common. But that's all good. We love a good comeback, and that's where we are now. For some people, they call this the third wave. For the indigenous, they say the wave was never over for us. Many of these psychedelic and sacred medicines, plants, fungi, toads, cacti, frogs, these things have been in indigenous cultures for millennia, and they've been used safely. I just got back from Psychedelic Science, the world's largest conference in Denver, Colorado last week, and just listening in on some of the discussions. And there was a film screening where we see children in South America sitting with the great mother ayahuasca, and they're just little. So the whole propaganda about how these things are going to fry your brain is largely that. It's propaganda. Now, there are certainly risks, and as a physician, I always get called on to do screening calls for people to see, is this safe? There are indeed risks, but in general, there's a lot greater safety. So, of course, if you're pregnant, if you have a history of bipolar with mania, if you've ever had a psychotic break, if schizophrenia is in your family or in a close, like first degree relative, then there are cautions. And certainly if you have high blood pressure that is not well controlled, there are major cautions, because things like ayahuasca and ibogaine and psilocybin mushrooms, they're going to raise your heart rate and your blood pressure, and even glaucoma. For many people, they want to make sure that your eye pressure is down because it's transient. It doesn't last forever, but yes, it can raise your blood pressure. All right, so our first question is from Sandra D., the artist. When using shrooms, do people microdose for the rest of their lives? Oh, that's a great question. So Sandra, we don't know yet. Like, people have only been talking about microdosing, at least with psilocybin mushrooms, for the last few years. We know that people have been using them for several years, and people were probably microdosing long before there was a Stamets protocol or a Fadiman protocol. But we don't know how long people are microdosing. When you hear some of the older psychonauts that took LSD as they were transitioning out of this world into the next, it sounds like some people are doing it all the way up until their last breath. As you know, Sandra D., I started microdosing after going to Amsterdam, where psilocybin truffles are legal, completely legal and safe. And I started doing that microdosing during the pandemic. And it just so happens that dovetailed with my own menopausal entry, and I noticed that it made a big difference for me. For most of us who do microdosing, you're going to be on for a period of time, and you definitely need a washout period. And I find that after doing it for several weeks and then taking breaks, I notice I'm optimized. I shot a video and wrote a blog about the 10 benefits I noticed from microdosing while doing neurofeedback, where I could actually measure my brainwave activity with the mind mirror. And I can see that so many things have improved since I've been microdosing. Will I do it for the rest of my life? Probably. Another question from Sandra D., the artist. She says, I know of an 83-year-old lady who said that she microdoses and she's living her best life. She's a star on TikTok now with millions of fans, and she is feisty. Well, I will tell you about another person who is super feisty and really rocking it, and that is Amanda Fielding. She was just with us in Jamaica for Beckley retreats. She is the spearheaded psychedelic genius between the Beckley Foundation, and we were also with her in Denver last week, and she just celebrated her 80th birthday, and she is someone who has started doing LSD way back in the 60s and found that it helped her kick her nicotine addiction. And of course, people back then in the 60s and whatnot, they were having sort of out of this world experiences. And she really believed that one way that we could get psychedelics into the mainstream was through science. And so, with her passion and definitely her life mission, she sought out to do that. And so, in 1998, when she founded the Beckley Foundation, her organization really funded the very first studies that all of us in the space have admired and relied upon. So, can you imagine 30 plus years of really looking at the science, and when people thought she was a crackpot and, you know, they weren't always kind to her. So, there you go. All right. So, my dear friend Jessica says that the link is not working. So, I'm going to try to generate a new interview link so that we can get Jess here on with us. So if you have other questions, please feel free to pop them into the chat while we get Jess back in the place to be. All right. So for many people, they find that just hearing about someone else having a psychedelic experience gave them more confidence. And that's also why I decided to share my own story. So we've got Jessika coming back here in just a second. So I would love for you to also hear about Jess's experience. So hang on one second. Let's get her set up. Hello, hello. So good to have you here.
Yes, I'm so sorry. Technology sometimes, I don't know, the link just didn't work.
That's all good. I just reset it, so it was probably the tech genies, but that's all good. So glad to have you here.
Yeah, so glad to be here today. And also, yeah, to talk about psilocybin and psychedelics again. Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Well, I gave a tiny little bit of an intro about you founding Women on Psychedelics. And, I think it's super cool that you, at such a young age, got to really focus your life's work on helping people heal from trauma, heal from drama, and in particular, you're really honed in on helping women. But I think it's always nice for people to hear your story from you. Tell us a little bit about how did you find your path into the world of psychedelics? And yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. My work actually with Women on Psychedelics, it started 3 years ago, almost. In the middle of the pandemic, I was going through a bit of a challenging period in my life in which I moved. I'm come originally from Brazil, and I was living in Thailand back then, and I moved here to Amsterdam, where I still am until today. But back then, there was a lot of restrictions once the pandemic started, and I got stuck in here without a visa to stay permanently. I could also not leave, and I was also not allowed to work. And like everybody else, I feel like the months in which the global pandemic started, they were very significant for me on a personal and transformational level. And because this was also a period in which I felt like not only me, but the whole world was going through something really big in a collective way. I was also in a time of my life in which I felt really stuck, and I felt like I didn't have the freedom and the independence that I wish I had back then. So from that place is actually where Women on Psychedelics was born. This project is also, of course, related a lot to my personal history in relationship with my mother and with my grandmother. And back then, starting to work with women and finding a place where, and creating a platform in which I could give voice to other women, it was really impactful and significant. But I didn't notice that up until now, because it really came from a place of like trying to give other women a place to speak up and share their stories when I really felt disempowered to share my own. And I didn't feel like I had the space to share mine. So after that, it really came up a period in which I started to get mentorship and experience with facilitating journeys. And most recently, like in the beginning of this year, I started to work with women only. We have run the ceremonies with Whoop since almost 2 years now. So this has been like an incredibly beautiful journey with a lot of learnings and a lot of healing for myself as well. It's really amazing what can happen also from the side of being the facilitator and holding these spaces, right? There's a lot that can happen in ceremonies and retreats experiences that are major learning lessons for us as well. And I feel like being in women-only spaces, not just on the educational realm, but also, in the psychedelic healing facilitation in general, is has been a big part of like how my life has shifted in this past 3 years. So yeah, I think like that summarizes a little bit of like, how did it all started. I didn't really go into how psychedelics actually came into my life, but I feel like because we shared about that in other conversations that we had, this would be a good place to bring it today as well.
Yeah. Well, I want to applaud you and thank you for the work you've done with women on psychedelics, which you call Whoop, um, because that's how I found you. And I did find that when I entered into this space more publicly and talking about my own psychedelic journeys, there really weren't a lot of women that were visible. And so when I found your platform, I was like, wow, finally. And so bravo to you and your co-founder. Really super grateful. And I do think it would be helpful to share, a little bit, if you want to. I'm going to share a little bit about how I got into the space, but I recognize we did an entire podcast together and other videos. So check out my YouTube channel or on Facebook or LinkedIn. But I love the way that just sort of you've organically experienced your own healing and then got mentorship to facilitate for others, because that's also what happened for me. In the very beginning of my alternative medicine route, it was the early 2000s when I was introduced to MDMA. And I was kind of surprised because at the age of 30 something, I hadn't done MDMA like most of my friends in high school. And I started to see that it was incredibly powerful as a heart opener and really helped me like get clear on the whole self-love issue that I hadn't figured out, even though I'd been to therapy and done so much. And that was what led me to the science, because I had these beautiful heart-opening experiences. I remember calling my mom late at night once while on MDMA and just, telling her I loved her, telling her I understood, like all these things. And I got curious, like, if this feels this good, like, what is this? Is it bad? Is all the programming I heard in the past right? And that's when I found that there were thousands of people in Europe, in the United States, using MDMA for therapy, for couples therapy, for people with depression and all sorts of trauma. And I found out that no, it's an incredibly safe molecule when you get it in its pure form. Of course, when you're buying stuff on the street, you never know what it's been tainted with or mixed with. But that was the big eye opener for me, and it really led me to start questioning all of the programming.
Yeah, I can so much speak. I can so much speak to that as well, because basically, I come from a country that has also been heavily impacted by the drug war, and you really see that in the streets of the big cities that we have there today, like the city where I come from in Rio. And so my mother also suffered with drug addiction throughout her life, until she passed away when I was 19. And so the programming, the whole conversation I had uh, during my upbringing, and the whole reality that I experienced was that drugs are bad, and they will lead you to a path that has no positive ending. So I spent pretty much most, like, 26 years of my life with that idea in my head until I first moved here in Amsterdam, and I also got in contact with drugs, and specifically psilocybin truffles were the first substances that I tried. And I tried truffles in a recreational setting in the actually this space of my current apartment, and it was very interesting how suddenly I was like, wait, but if drugs are bad, why this feels so good, and why this feels so healing? This was back in 2018, and that started a whole new process of deconditioning for me, and like really relearning everything I thought I knew about the substances, and specifically psychedelics and their whole potential. So just like for you, a whole new world opened up for me. And to the point that when I first came into the space, I really thought education was like the thing that was of ultimate importance. Because I do really feel like, for example, if more education would be out there everywhere, and not just in Brazil or here in the Netherlands or in the US, there would be more opportunities for people to have access in a safer way, or to know how to use the substances in a more, responsible way. And back in my mind, this would go even further to think of like, perhaps then my mother would have had a different life, and perhaps even I would have a different life to today. So a big foundation piece of the educational work that I do is how really I hope this can impact the normalization around the conversations about these compounds and about drug use in general, especially concerning women's health and women's drug use. But it really comes from this place, of course, inside of my own personal story and how I wish things were different, but how I can, make way for change on the way forward. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, your story is always so deeply touching to me because I like you, I feel like, wow, so many things could have been different if we had different education and destigmatization around drugs. And I mean, I'm grateful for where we are today, for sure. I'm just going to address a couple of questions that have come in on the YouTube channel. So, Bradley, yes, this is a group welcoming to supportive men. We're talking a little bit about our psilocybin truffle retreat for women, which is happening in August. But we also have a male-female psilocybin retreat in October. So it's not just about the men, but we have a soft spot for women, of course. And then Michelle writes, I'm primarily interested in MDMA assisted psychotherapy, but since it's not legal outside of clinical trials or compassionate use, can you speak to how this psilocybin retreat might compare experientially to MDMA assisted psychotherapy? So Jess, have you done MDMA?
I have done MDMA, but not in the context of psychedelic therapy, because, yeah, as you know, it's also illegal here. So maybe you can speak more to that,
Yeah.
and I'm happy to jump in and talk about the difference in experiences, of course, as well.
Absolutely. And then, so what's legal there? Is marijuana legal in the Netherlands?
No, a lot of people think so, but actually not. It's just decriminalized. We do have the coffee shops here. You can buy up to a certain amount. It is overall socially accepted, but it's not legal here. The only thing that we have and are legal are the psilocybin truffles, which are the ones that we're going to use for our retreats. But even the psilocybin mushrooms are also not legal here, which I find is, pretty interesting, and one of those things that, you know, the war on drugs doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So we'll jump back into talking about truffles in a minute and the difference between them. So I mentioned that back in the early 2000s, I really got a new education on MDMA. And for me, MDMA assisted psychotherapy is like having a really knowledgeable guide with you while you're having this intense, sometimes spiritual adventure of the mind. So MDMA is not a psychedelic. It's not a hallucinogen where you might see wavy colors and see God, or well, you might, but you know, it's not. You're not gonna have visual and auditory hallucinations per se, but just to understand that MDMA is a type of medicine that for just a few hours, you're going to feel this extra openness of your heart, this empathic understanding of yourself, of others. For some people, though, they will experience challenging emotions coming up because it's finally opening them up. But when you add in the psychotherapy, you're typically being partnered with a skilled listener. So with MDMA, you can still talk, whereas when we're doing psychedelic psilocybin assisted therapy, quite often you're not having a conversation with your guide or your facilitator. In general, I mean, if you're taking the substance, you may talk to them, but they're not usually talking back. It's not like a therapy session. For many people, when the fullest dose hits, they're laying down. When we do this on retreats, we've got nice mattresses for folks, and so you may experience yourself having your own therapy session in your head, like working things out. But that's one of the major differences between MDMA. So MDMA gives you this chance to like look at things in your mind, but it's not generally as scary or confusing as, you know, some of the other psychedelics. I also find that MDMA really helps people learn how to handle their big energy, big feelings, especially for people who've experienced some sort of trauma or adverse childhood experience. Of course, people who've been at war or who've experienced a great deal of loss. So a lot of people call MDMA an empathogen because it increases empathy, that heart-opening compassion where people just feel love. I've also felt that sense of love and heart-opening on mushrooms and as well as ayahuasca. But generally, if you're taking a therapeutic dose of psilocybin, you're not sitting up having a conversation with your therapist. And we generally don't want a therapist to be interpreting or feeding into your journey. We want you to just go within, because it's your own inner healing intelligence working in combination with these mushrooms that are going to bring you the insights.
Yeah, I really see it the same way. I feel like psilocybin really touches deeply in this inner healing capacity that we all have. And so during the experience itself, it really feels like there's a lot going on in a somatic level, in a really felt sense of things, in which you can, at times, it's not about making sense of things here, because we are here all the time. But during the psilocybin experience, it's really about feeling and allowing yourself to feel all the things that might be related. Oh my gosh, there's so much sun. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
It's about really feeling emotions that you might not have allowed yourself to feel in the past. Or it's about connecting with yourself if you felt disconnected from your body for a really long time. In high dose experiences, this can feel quite big. And this is also why I feel, and I know the role of a guide and having a therapist next to you is really important to reassure you that everything is fine and everything is welcome. All emotions are welcome. All bodily sensations are welcome. If you need to shake things out, if you need to cry and let it all out, if you need to laugh, all of that is part of the experience, and all of that is why we are here for. And the difference that I see then also with the MDMA, which is more related to the talking and letting things out through those means, is that we can do some talking in preparation for the psilocybin experience and also during integration. But what I like to do always with my clients and also on retreats is really try to keep everyone more in this embodied level and in the embodied part of the experience. So right after it, we're not immediately being brought back to here. Because again, we can do talking therapy for many years and there's just this far that we can go. There's only so much we can do through talking, and especially related to trauma, I feel like a lot of things are really stored in our bodies and they can only be released through our bodies. And that's where I think like psilocybin and other psychedelics have an incredible potential to really touch those points and remind us that we can heal it, all of it, by ourselves. I also like don't attribute like the healing to the psychedelic itself, but more is one of the many tools that we can use that can empower us and remind us that we do have that capacity. So yeah, that's what I like the most about psilocybin. MDMA is also amazing, but I really hope that in the future we're gonna have more access to it here, because also at times I've seen the combination of both can be incredible.
Yeah, that's been the newest thing that I've been seeing talked about, and I'm kind of exploring is these combinations. So I've heard of people combining ketamine with marijuana or cannabis. I've heard of people combining MDMA with a mushroom trip, and it makes sense. I mean, they're operating on different receptor sites in the brain, so that heart opening release of oxytocin, feeling safe to like explore your feelings, explore your past is beautiful. And then, as you said, with psilocybin, we really get into the body. We can start to feel what's coming up, what needs to be released. And I think what's important about our first retreat in August is the body positivity. Like when you start to really feel that this body, this is a precious vessel that's been bringing you through life to live out your destiny. I find that for me, I have like such a different relationship to my body. There's so much more self-love and acceptance and awe. Like when I'm in psilocybin, it's like remembering like I've carried a child, I gave birth, like I've traveled the world, and I'm a lot more compassionate to my body. And I think part of that is when we're in the psychedelic space, we often have access to different parts of ourselves. And with whether that's MDMA or psilocybin and even ayahuasca and ketamine, we can get access to a more compassionate part of us rather than always having that critical voice. And that may come up too. I mean, we can have a trip that goes kind of sideways and that negative part is there. But when we get in touch with that compassionate part, I find that that's incredibly healing. And then, as you said, by staying in the body without having to go to the mind to make sense of it, to interpret it, that's what integration is for. By just really accepting and being in the body, it's profound in the shifts that I've seen in myself and in my clients for people who've been able to say they have a newfound appreciation. And then you'll hear people say that after going on a psilocybin journey, now they want to eat better and they're going out and they're exercising, not because of this obsession with getting down to a certain size or the way their body looks. It's like they're recognizing that it's such a gift.
Yeah, for sure. And also like what I've noticed with a lot of the people that I worked with is, yeah, it's fully like a new relationship with yourself, with your body, but also really getting more in tune with what your body is trying to tell you. Because I think at the end of the day, our body is incredibly wise, perhaps much wiser than our minds. And I've seen a big shift in a lot of people after having a psychedelic experience on being finally able to tell what they are feeling in their bodies, or when they are feeling tired, or when they are feeling is the moment to slow down, which Nowadays, in the fast-paced society that we have, there's a lot of people that really don't know how to do that and how to connect with that. So psilocybin, but of course other psychedelics can be an incredible tool to foster that reconnection. And I feel, yeah, you said it in a very beautiful way. For women especially, I noticed that for me, it has been an ongoing journey, and I'm not saying like I'm completely healed or I have a great relationship with my body every day in terms of like feeling I look beautiful or I'm in incredible shape. But the compassion piece has been really life changing to start seeing my body as really this, yeah, vessel of experiences that have moved through the world and all its scars and everything on its shape has brought me until where I am today and have found a new sense of appreciation for who I am and how I am and how I look like. So this has been um, one of the biggest uh, benefits I got from psychedelic experience journeys in general, but most especially of working with women and sitting myself in ceremonies with other women, in which I've I've seen and I've heard through sharings that we all go through very similar insecurities and we all go through very similar, inner critic talks. And coming to the spaces and seeing that other women that are completely different from me, that I would think like they don't have these insecurities, also go through the same things has been really comforting in some ways, uh, but also it helped me see that there is really not no point in being so hard on myself and so hard on, yeah, how I look like and all of that.
And that makes me think of one of the reasons why I love retreats and being in a group is that when you start to share in a sharing circle and you're hearing about someone else's experience or their life or their fears and insecurities, you realize, oh my God, I thought I was the only one. And when you realize, like, we're all living this human existence, which is so complex, which is full of all of the insecurities and the, thinking that you're the only weirdo, that's part of the healing journey. And that's part of what compassion is recognizing we're all weirdo humans. We all have our flaws. We all have that internal critic that's analyzing. It may be analyzing appearance or analyzing performance. It's like we all have it because that's just the nature of being a human.
Yeah,
So someone
yeah.
asked if we could review, Kristen, who I recently spoke with, like the overview of the actual retreat program. I think that would be helpful because for people who think about sitting with mushrooms, they're reading and they're seeing films of people just going out into the forest, which can be
Mm-hmm.
very healing to be out in nature. But speaking again to this idea of how the group format is really helpful. So I just thought maybe we could talk through how the program works. For each of these retreats, the Sacred Feminine Retreat, which is just for women and femme identifying people in the Netherlands in August, and then our Visionary Leaders Retreat is for males and females in October. So it's four nights and 5 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can give more or less an overview. Both of them will differ in terms of like the facilitation group, because on the women only retreat, we will only have female facilitators. And they will also differ in some of the content in terms of like the workshops that we hold, because they each have different focuses. So what we're trying to do here is really a curated, unique experience that will suit the needs and try to attend the needs of each group for each retreat, but as well try to work with a collective intention for this experience. So, of course, each person will come to the retreat with their own personal intention for going on ceremony with psilocybin. But part of our work here is coming with our collective intention as facilitators on why we are offering these retreats in the first place. Basically, our program includes, if I'm correct, 4 preparation sessions beforehand and 4 integration sessions afterwards, which are, I cannot say how important those are. I cannot say it enough, but it's really, we thought a lot about that because it really makes a difference on how you connect with the group beforehand and how you show up for yourself throughout both periods. The program of the retreat itself, it includes the workshops that we're going to be holding. It includes breath work. I don't want to give too much details on the workshops because for the women retreat, I might try to bring something that is focused on shadow work, for shame and comparison, which is something that comes up a lot for women. But we also always try to have and bring more of like somatic activities. So what we will have is as well the breath work, yoga. We're going to have lots of free time, which is really important as well. We're going to have 2 ceremonies that are spaced out in the 2nd day of the retreat and in the 4th day of the retreat. And we have time one-on-one with facilitators to talk about your experience and really to give people the support that they need throughout the entire retreat. So one thing that I think it's really important to mention in that is how we are really trying to pay a lot of care and attention to the details of how we can make everyone feel that they are being fully supported, that they are being properly held. Also, the way we hold ceremonies, I think we bring up musicians that are also facilitators, so we can really create this beautiful space in which is also being held with a lot of gentleness, so that people can have this experience and see that, you know, the healing doesn't always have to be hard work. But because I also feel like there are a lot of people that have suffered with trauma do have this, it's not a mentality, but this idea that we need to fight for things and healing only can happen when things are hard and you gotta work for it. But what we are really trying to bring in there is that we can add some fun, we can add some lightness and gentleness to this entire process. And that's where I really see, like, when you are having these experiences in a fully supported space by people who know what they are doing, but also in a group, because the dynamics of a group, they can trigger all sorts of things inside of you. And that by itself, it's quite something else, right? Because I fully believe that all of our wounds are relational, so all of our healing can also only be relational. So what I see is that a lot of people come for day 1 of the retreat, and day 5 they are like, oh my gosh, this was a life-changing experience, and they form bonds for like life with the people who were there. So I think more or less I touch a little bit on the program. I don't want to give like the whole information about it, because I also find it's really nice when we get there and we get there in trust and we show up for what's in there in the best possible way. So that's the key, a little bit of surprise elements. But if people have questions about it, feel free to ask.
No, I think it's good to give like the basics, that you're greeted on the first day with an opening welcome ceremony. And you're right, by that point you will have had all these prep calls that we do on Zoom, so you got to know the facilitation team and your fellow journeyers, and then we have a meal together on that first day, and then each day we've got movement or meditation or yoga. So that's like helping people who maybe have struggled with that. Being on retreat is a really great way to start creating these new habits. And so we build the container for you. And of course, all of your meals are included. So we've got a really sensitive kitchen where they can cater to anyone's needs, whether they've got allergies or gluten intolerance or what have you. So you get to eat really clean food while you're there, and you're in the Netherlands where there's space that's really beautiful. So one of the things I really love about doing psychedelics is how it's helped me connect to the earth, to this great mother that we live on. And so being in a retreat setting where you can go outside, or you can feel the earth, where you can see the sky or hear the birds, that's part of that healing journey as well. And so, yeah, I think it's beautiful that we were able to create this container collectively. And then those two psilocybin journeys, they're with psilocybin truffles, which, as we've already pointed out, are completely legal in the Netherlands. And that means you get to just relax. You don't have to worry that someone's going to check on you or say you're doing something bad or awful. And I find that that's really important for those of us that have had trauma in the past. You're probably used to holding on tight and always making sure that you're safe and not letting your guard down. And that's why, another reason why we want to have a femme-only retreat, because for women who've carried any sort of trauma, you want to know that you can be safe to open up and be vulnerable. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like another, really key aspect of being in the retreat is, as you touched on that, is really this container that invites people to slow down, to be fully there, to be fully present for whatever arises, and for themselves and for each other. And we don't get to do a lot of that in the fast-paced life unless we really put intention and effort in that. So for me personally, like, the main benefits of the retreat is really like being taken out of my life and have this invitation to, like, hey, this time is for you and this time is to connect with you. So I'm really curious how is that going to feel like for everybody that is joining there.
And so we're happy to take other questions if you want to type into the chat what you're curious about as it pertains to a psilocybin journey. And I think it's also important for us to talk a little bit about integration. So Jessika mentioned that we have a 4-week integration program. So following the retreat, we'll meet on Zoom so that you can reconnect with this beautiful group and get support, because kind of going back into your everyday world may be challenging because you've just had a big experience. And I provide all sorts of journaling prompts and guided meditations, things that are specifically designed to go with integration, so that whatever's come up in your journeys, you can start to make sense of it afterward and start to embody it and allow it to inform your life going forward.
Yeah. And also, like, I think one big thing of the integration aspect, especially when people are coming out of the retreat, is really to keep part of that container and part of their relationship with people who also have shared big experience in, recently in their lives. And for a lot of people, when they come back home, they do not have a big support system or a lot of people that they can talk to about what just happened, or how different do I feel, or what are the changes I need to do now in my life. So really having the support of this group and also of the facilitators throughout the period of integration makes a big difference on how you're gonna understand your insights, downloads, however you want to call it, but also how you're going to bring up more compassion and understanding and even change into your life. I really see as well with, like, a lot of my clients, sometimes they just need people to talk to about what happened. So this integration piece, I find, is really where the journey starts. And I find that at times it's even more important than the psychedelic experience itself, because it's what you do with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I so agree, because I know that a lot of a lot of people that I've met on these journeys have told me that they just hop from one experience to the next experience. It's like they feel like that psychedelic experience is all of it, and I'm like, but how? What are you doing to integrate that? Like, how is that informing your life? So I agree with you. Like, the journey isn't over just because the medicine wore off. You get to continue this journey of like changing your life for the better.
Yeah, yeah, and I do get like when sometimes people go from one experience to the other, but I just like you can really see when there is something that they are trying to escape from. So let me just go in another ceremony, and maybe this time I get a different message. Um, but most of the times, you need to give yourself the space, the time, and
Yeah.
the rest in between, in order, to properly embody the experience that you just had and embody the insights of that experience that you had. So we really hope like that throughout the integration process of the retreat, that people feel as well. Oh my God, my English. That they feel as well supported as they felt throughout the entire preparation and retreat experience, because it's really key this moment of the journey as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and just, hearing so many stories of people who just flew somewhere and didn't have prep and integration, where they really felt unsafe and unstable and unsupported. That's just something that, for me, it's a standard that we have this safe container. So we have
Yeah.
another question from Sandra D. How long does each journey last?
So the ceremonies we start around noon, and it goes until the end of the afternoon. The duration of psilocybin is between 5 and 6 hours. The way we take the psilocybin is we make a tea out of the truffles. So the onset of the experience, meaning the experience starts to happen really fast, between 10 and 20 minutes. And then the peak of the experience is of about 2 hours to 3 hours at times. And then you slowly come down of it. And basically, we are all in this ceremonial space, which is a big room where all the facilitators and all the group is there. And we are there until the ceremony is properly over. So at times there can be people that need a longer period of support, and sometimes there are people that are in a different part of that journey. But we really try to meet everybody where they are at. And yeah, regarding the experience itself, and the session, I feel like you already said it, right? Like we have people lying down in their mattresses. At times, you can have a blindfold on, so you really focus in your experience. And at all times, we have the facilitators walking through the room and singing or playing instruments and live music happening. So that really guides you throughout the entire journey.
Yeah, and I love that part of it. For me personally, as a singer, a songwriter, a vocalist, being able to use my voice in ceremony has been such a gift. I feel like all parts of me are finally home as
Mm-hmm.
a retreat facilitator. And I love the way that we can use music. Like the facilitation team, we're very tapped in. It's a very intuitive art. And just knowing when to be silent, when to play some music that's upbeat, when to get people back into their experience. That's really magical. So I'm super excited to be surrounded by so many beautiful songbirds and musicians.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I'm the only facilitator on the team who doesn't sing, so I'm really looking forward to learn from all of you there as well.
Awesome. Well, Jessika, this has been awesome. I want to invite folks who are curious to visit my website. And are these also, some of them are on Whoop right now, on Women on Psychedelics, at least
Hmm.
Sacred
Yeah,
Feminine,
yeah.
or both of them?
Both, just Sacred Feminine is on Whoop right now.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you can go to Women on Psychedelics and learn more about Jessika and her whole platform that she co-founded. You can visit AndreaPennington.com and you'll see links to check out the Sacred Feminine or the Visionary Leadership Psilocybin Truffle Retreats that we're hosting in the Netherlands. And applications are open now. We also have early bird pricing until July 20th. So if you'd like to come on retreat with us, save some money, go through this, transformative experience, we would very, very much love to meet with you. So once you fill out an application, we can jump on Zoom or the phone and just get to know if this is really right for you, and then voila, we'll see you in Amsterdam.
Yeah, that's super exciting. So, yeah, if any other questions pop up, even after everybody seeing the website, please feel free to reach out to either of us, and we are more than happy to answer about any fears or doubts that you might have before boarding on this journey. But really looking forward to see what groups we're gonna have for both retreats. I'm pretty excited.
Me too, because I think that bringing in sort of the mystical, spiritual side to this, I find that every group journey that I've been on, by the middle or the end of it, I'm realizing there was a divine hand that brought each of us there. It wasn't just, oh yeah, well the dates fit with my vacation. It's like you think that it's all just, but no, it's like they're each of the souls that are brought together, from the facilitating team to the musicians and the participants. It's like there's this magic, and like you said, by the end of the retreat, people are like forming these bonds, and it's like our souls knew we were going to meet. So I'm really excited for that part of it as well.
Yeah, I fully believe in that. Like, we all carry medicine for each other, right? Like, we are working with medicine, but there's a bigger medicine that is inside of each of us. And when we come together to these spaces, I also feel like all the synchronicities, they are there for a reason. So I'm really excited every time that there is a retreat or a ceremony, and everything that comes out of it and the connections that come out of it. So really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to getting new applications in and meeting with folks. Our last question that came in from Sandra D is, could you just drink the tea just before bedtime and sleep and dream with it? Well, depends on how many grams you're going for there, Sandra D. I mean, a microdose you could probably sleep with. Maybe you'd have some pretty intense, vivid dreams. But generally, when you're getting up to a therapeutic dose, like the doses that we use on retreat, it's a very active inner journey.
I do feel like the psychedelic experience can feel a lot like the dream-like state, right? And I do feel both the dreams and both the psychedelic experience really tap into our subconscious and everything that is in there. So the way that the journey unfolds can be at times a lot of metaphors. It can be like, oh, this doesn't make sense, and it can feel like a lot like a dream. So maybe, yeah, like not really before bed, but you can still have like the dreamlike experience. Yeah, having it during the day.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you, Jessika. And thank you to everyone who tuned in here live. And if you're watching on the replay, you can type replay. And we look forward to connecting with you about these retreats and answering your questions. And definitely look forward to journeying with you in the Netherlands. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Take good care. Bye.